Thank it's Dr. Shanti Rao. So welcome to Blissful Mind, Peaceful Life, where we discuss creative solutions to everyday problems. So we're very fortunate to have Basil here joining us. And the topic today was highly requested, and it's about confidence. So Basil, we're still waiting for the others, but let's get started. So I wanted to know, how did you develop your confidence? And could you give some tips to the people watching about how they could develop their confidence?
Well, I don't claim to be an expert in having confidence, but I think the big thing about, in my opinion, one of the core ingredients or the core essentials to have confidence is starts with the sense of belief. It starts with the sense of self belief. Hello, hi.
Hi.
We have a couple of other guys joining in. Hi.
So we just have our other two guests joining us. So we have Erin and Anvitha. Hi, everyone.
Morning. Hello, everyone.
Hello. So we were just chatting with Basil, and he was sharing some information. We were talking, the topic today is confidence, and he was sharing with us a little bit about his journey and how he developed his confidence. And then I just wanted you to continue, please.
Yes, yeah. So I think it starts with a sense of self-belief, and I think the concept of self-belief is, of course, there's a certain degree of it's a certain degree of revelation, I believe, but also it's got a big amount of not being too concerned about what others have to think or imagine about you. So I think it's two-sided. So one is intrinsic, and the other side is extrinsic. At the end of the day, the most important thing is that you believe in what you do, and you do what you do in the best possible way you can. So I think there's an element of hard work, there's an element of sincerity, there's an element of diligence, and there's an element of acceptance. So I think there are a few parameters which you need to put together. I always tell people I don't believe in being confident. I believe in being conviction. I believe in the concept of conviction, and I think that's a combination of a little bit of confidence, a little bit of faith, and a little bit of arrogance. I think it's a good mixture of these three, and that's something which nobody can give you, and it's something that nobody can take away. So, answering your question pretty shortly, I think it's a combination of intrinsic and extrinsic factors, which need to come together. Yeah.
Right. So that's really helpful. I appreciate your lovely comments. So what I was hearing is that confidence has to start from within. So a lot of it has to do with the work we do on ourselves and self-development. And then it will shine through in your actions. And also it sounded like you were talking about intentions. So, when we have a good intention to educate, inspire, help others, then automatically it's easy to be confident. So a lot of it has to do with that as well. And then you were talking about acceptance. So a lot of great points. Thank you. So now I'm going to move on to welcome our other two guests. So hi, everyone. So Erin, did you want to... So basically, we were talking about a question that a lot of my followers were asking. They're asking, how could we be more confident? So I was wondering if you could share your tips.
Hi, everybody, and thank you for having me here today with everyone. I'm super excited to meet all of the other guests on this live. Confidence is kind of what the gentleman was saying, and sorry, I don't see your name right off the bat, but confidence comes from knowing a lot of what you're doing and why you're doing it. And you can kind of fake some things till you make it, which I think a lot of us have heard in our day-to-day lives, especially when we're setting off on a new path. But there's still some element of that in yourself that you just kind of believe that you have the presence to show up and be impactful to either your community or your friends, or making a difference in your environment. And I think that's where we all cultivate different levels of confidence. And there's that certain, even if you don't have that talent or skill, let's just kind of put it out there, or you're trying something completely different, in yourself that you are determined, that you are not going to just give up, that you are accepting of failure as a way of growth and learning more about yourself. And I feel like that's a lot of what confidence has to deal with too, is that level of vulnerability that allows you to grow, heal, change, adapt. And so I feel like confidence is kind of just a confluence of the determination to grow and be something, and to wait and be patient until you find the right level of acceptance or kind of avenue of acceptance within the environment.
That's a beautiful answer. And so it kind of resonates with our other guest, Basil, about acceptance and then about having that intention to, do good in the world and spread our talents and share, right?
Yeah.
And so you covered a lot of great points. I really love that. So, Anvitha, I would like to know your views about confidence. So, how can people develop more confidence in, that?
Yes, first of all, thanks for having me here. And for me, according to me, more than confidence, clarity is important. So if you have a vision and you work towards it, confidence will automatically come to you. That is what I feel. And other than this, we have to understand that nobody is perfect, and we should remember that everybody makes mistakes. So it is just that we learn from our mistakes all the time. So this is how we build confidence, and we have to stop comparing ourselves with others, because we have to know each one is unique. And other than this, we have to be thankful for whatever we have. And this is the point which I had to convey.
That's really great. I love those points. So you were kind of telling us your journey, right? So embracing our imperfections, showing up, like Erin said, with the vulnerability, just taking the chance, and going and enjoying the process, and not expecting to be, and also our intention and determination, which I think Basil kind of covered as well, right? The sense of purpose that you have within, which then shines outside. And in terms of that, all of those answers resonate with me. So a lot of like our guests, they are trying to go to interviews, not guests, sorry, my followers are going to interviews. So they feel like they're not confident enough, or some people, they want to do reels, or perform and put things out there, but they don't feel that confidence. So I'm going to go around the room and ask you guys how, some tips that you learned along the way. So Basil, I noticed you're always, performing. So could you tell us some tips like that the other viewers can, learn from, that helped you to get to where you are?
Yes, of course. I think the most. So I used to be a stammerer. I used to stutter quite a lot. But I never stuttered when I was on stage or whenever I had to perform, quote unquote, right? So whatever that was, it was an elocution, it was presenting something, it was doing anything of that sort. And there were a couple of things which I think I did consciously and also to a certain degree unconsciously, which helped. The conscious thing. So there's probably only one thing I did consciously, and that was really transporting myself to a different frame of mind. So if I were to give an elocution, in this case, if I'm to give an interview, for example, the common thought process is, all right, I don't know, if I'm standing on a stage, the common thought process is, I am doing something in front of 50 people, 100 people, 500 people. Wow, there are 50, 500, 100, 500 people who are staring at me, right? So this is the common frame of mind you walk into, and you feel the spotlight is on you. So what I consciously tried to do was to flip that over, and this was just, something that I did as a young kid, and that was, well, I have 50 to 100 to 500 people who are waiting to listen to me. So this is just a mental hack. So I kind of moved away from being in the spotlight to kind of hack my system to actually think, to make believe that actually those people are waiting for me to say something instead of them waiting to judge what I'm saying. This is something which I did very consciously, I know, a few times when I was very young. I'm talking about 12, 13, 14, 15 years old. That helped me get over the stage fright. And this is something that just lasts for the first 1 or 2 minutes, right? I just need to get through the first 1, 2 minutes, because once I've gone through that, I'm in my element and then I'm fine. But it's a question of how do I conquer those first 2 minutes. I think the same technique can be used for whatever interviews. It doesn't matter. But this only worked because subconsciously or unconsciously, for me, I was not, at no point in time, be it in an interview or be it in even now here, or even if I was performing, At no point in time am I trying to show somebody what I'm not. So I have the confidence to just present myself the way I am, you know. So, and because of that, I don't really have a problem as to how the other person perceives me. If I do have that fright, I bring in that 1 2 minutes of the mental hack to get over the first 2 minutes, and then I'm fine. So these are two things that I did. I think one was conscious, the other thing was pretty unconscious. And I think the unconscious part was more about presenting who I really am. It doesn't matter if it's an interview or if it's anything. It is just presenting who I am. So yeah.
That's really great. I love that hack. That there are 500 people waiting to listen to me. That's really amazing. Thank you. Beautiful tip. And so, Erin, I was wondering, what was, important in your journey, being able to put yourself out there, make those reels and, show up in front of large audiences?
What's actually really kind of funny, so I was just addressing this with one of my posts this week about kind of like body image and radical acceptance. And like, over time, we're all getting older, we're all changing, I'm not this sprightly young person anymore. And as I've started to go through that, I've noticed that even when taking pictures or making reels or doing videos, or even like when I'm on stage and I'm talking publicly and I'm sharing my story, that I found myself trying to change how I was showing up. And I kind of had to stop myself. And I had this very intense moment, especially doing my yoga training and some of my meditation classes, where it was like, oh, I'm not so flexy. I'm not so bendy anymore. I'm creaking in the morning. When I, arch over to the side, you can see wrinkles and all those kinds of fun things. And I'm a very natural person. I'm not going to go out there, and I'm definitely not going to do some of the things that are more Western medicine. And so I started practicing like a journaling in which you use like a present, a next tense, and the third person tense of I am. So I, Erin Dalia, am. You, Erin Dalia, are. Erin Dalia is. And I started writing that like as many times as I could a day, and relative to like body acceptance, relative to the acceptance of the person that I currently am and that I'm showing up as. Because I think as we're children and we learn to kind of fit in, we just have this playfulness about us, this Superman syndrome kind of thing, right? We're going to do the world. And none of us have that up until we start changing, like our physical form starts aging, or, after my accident, I was perceived differently until my surgery scars healed and all that kind of fun stuff. And so I've definitely used the writing, but then something my grandmother taught me was, after I had had the surgery, so dog accident, this whole side of my face was covered in surgical stuff. And she would have me stare at myself in the eye, in the mirror, and just say, I love you, Erin Rose Dalia, just as you are. And every time I pass a reflection, and anytime I pass something, I don't always say it out loud, right? Because it's not for the world, it's for me. But in my head, I'm saying that. So even now, like, I'm looking in the rear view of my, in the mirror of my car, and I kind of stop, look at myself in the eyes, like, oh, I love you, Erin Rose Dalia, just the way you are. And that is just, different levels of checking in with yourself and making sure that no matter what point of your day, your darkest night, like your most intense moments, your happiest of moments, that you're just taking that moment to really recognize who you are without the masks on and accepting who that is. And I feel like that inevitably builds that internal confidence because you're always practicing self-acceptance and self-care.
That's really good. Thank you. I appreciate that. So it starts in your case, you're sharing the tip that it starts with self-love and self-acceptance, and then we can show up authentically for others, right?
Yes.
Thank you. And so, Anvitha, tell me a little bit about your journey. So was there a time when you were not confident and then you found some ideas or tips that you could share with others that helped you to be more confident?
Yes, in my school days, I used to stammer a lot. And for the person I am now, the main contribution I would, the credit goes to my school because that is how they crafted me. And they brought me into the limelight and gave me exposure. This is how I was, exposed. And this is how I was given exposure, and that is how my confidence was built. But later, after school days, yes, I again, because of the change in the environment, I had lost that confidence once again. So then I just thought to myself, why not go back to the old me? I was, it was so good being that confident, and I just wanted to change the way I was. So first I started to, develop, take care of my health, because according to me health is very important to be confident. And then I thought, what, like, I just listed on what are my strengths and weaknesses. I just got to know myself better so that I can give out my best. So this is how I faced that challenge, and I, became more confident.
That's really great. So she mentioned a really good tip that I also found very helpful, and that is getting to know yourself and your strengths. Because we always criticize ourselves, we, always put ourselves down. But if we actually write down at least three of our strengths and we read them every day, and even if you don't know your strengths, then you can just remember the good compliments or what things people ask you for help, or the compliments that you consistently get, and you can just write those down and remind yourself, and then that will help you to boost your confidence. And also being in the present moment. So if we're just here like we are right now, totally focused on the task at hand, then our fears sort of disappear. So a lot of our fears are just our anticipating a negative outcome. So when we're just in the present moment being, then it's easier to be confident. But I have another question for our guests. So sometimes people go through some phase of life where they get a lot of negative feedback from other people, like they get criticized, or they go through, they make a big mistake. And then they go from having like a fairly good level of confidence to no confidence. So I was wondering, we'll start with Basil. What do you think, like, when you've faced those kind of situations where truly, like, there was criticism, there was things going against you, then how did you, build back your confidence or bounce back?
Yes, and that's why in my first comment I spoke about conviction. Because confidence is something that can come and go. It's like happiness. It One day you can be happy, one day you cannot. One day you may not. But joy is something that stays. Joy is something that stays, is from within, and that's why I refer to a concept called conviction. So, and answering your question, yeah, of course, I've had enough times when I've been, battered down and critiqued. And criticism is not necessarily bad. I think many times criticism is good. The question, of course, is are you able, or the one who gives you that critique, is that person coming from a good place or not? And if they're coming from a good place, there's nothing for you to do but just working, just to work on it, improve yourselves, and improve yourself and move on. You should be thankful that you had someone who actually pointed out flaws which you could improve on, if they're coming from a good place. But if they're not coming from a good place, then those are I don't call them criticism. I would call them as opinions, and I would just ignore those opinions and move on, right? So the point is, yes, if you're going to constantly face negative or even constructive criticism, it can affect your confidence. But if you've got a strong base of conviction, if you're someone who's got that kernel of conviction, it is not very difficult for you to climb back up. Answering your question very specifically, every time I have had negative criticism, it has only fueled me harder. To this date, if somebody comes to me and says, "You're doing great," I'm like, "Yeah, thank you very much. I really appreciate it." Someone comes and tells me, "I think you're rubbish. Your music is the worst ever in the world," or something really hard. That hits me, and that is something I want to work on. Like, oh, really? I'm going to prove you wrong. And I've done that a few times, and of course, when you succeed in it a few times, it makes it easier for you to accept it as well, because you can bounce back, right?
Right.
The problem is the first time. The first time when you get something like that, when you get hit down, how do you get up? And I think the answer to that is you need to have a strong basis, kernel of conviction. And conviction is a combination of confidence. It's a combination of faith. Yeah, I don't care what you believe in, whether it's the flying spaghetti monster, or Buddha, or Allah, or Christ, or somebody else, or Elon Musk. It doesn't matter what. But you need to understand that there is something beyond your control that you can, So there's an element of faith, there's an element of confidence, and there is an element of arrogance. When you put them together, you get conviction. If you have conviction, you can get back. But I cannot explain. What I'm trying to say is actually, it is very difficult to get up if confidence is your only core. but you have to get up, and the only way you can do that is if you've got conviction as your base.
I see what you're
Do you
saying.
know
Like,
what I mean?
so what I'm hearing
Yeah.
is that it's about like consistency as well, right? Like you decide
Yeah.
you want to put out your whatever art, music, and you show up every time and you never give up, no matter what happens.
Yeah.
So it's that
Yeah.
consistency and determination that's really important. So that's the core,
Yeah.
right? That helps you to bounce back.
Yes.
Really good.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. And
Beautiful.
I think it's also understanding that when people critique you, you need to give them the benefit of doubt. You need to think of your starting point should be they want you to improve. Whether that's real or not is irrelevant, right? But if you perceive it as a genuine good intention, you can deal with it much better than if you perceive it as a negative intention.
Right.
So that's the other side of it. Yeah.
Right. I see what you're saying. Going for a growth mindset rather than just
Yes.
thinking, okay, I'm great and this is just, these are haters. No, you want to grow. So you take
Correct.
it as, okay, this is where do I grow? You take it as good feedback. So Erin, what do you think about, like, how people have made mistakes and then they're in a low place, or, like they get this criticism and then their confidence that was here has gone down. So what tips have you found in your life to be useful for that? Get back
I
your
have to
confidence.
chime in with the first guest and say that I often have learned to take the mirror reflection of my environment as the opportunity to ask myself, well, what about that experience is mine? Like ownership, and own that. Because there's a huge part of my life where I disassociated from the experience of living, and I did some pretty nasty things. Like, I'm not proud of it. But the thing is it took me a really long time to accept and be able to say that out loud, to know the darkest part of myself that I'm most familiar with, so that when people do use that with me, or they have something to say that's negative or criticism or just outright not nice, I can still stop and reflect on it and say, okay, well, it is going to trigger me in some ways. I do own the fact that I've not been a perfect person my whole life. I have dark sides that help create balance within me, because I don't want to flip into toxic positivity, and I don't want to just live with rosy colored glasses on, but I also don't want to live in my darkest nights. And so by accepting that as a human, as a soul living in this body, I am light and I am dark, and I am walking around in darkness trying to follow my own light. And that when I get those opportunities from my environment, whether it's someone I really care about or it's someone just completely random, I reflect on the fact and I ask myself, well, okay, what am I actually feeling? Am I angry? Am I hurt? Am I remembering that point in time where, somebody picked on me when I was a child and I learned to internalize it first? And just own that part. And by owning it, you kind of take away the power of the environment or the person who committed to the comment, and you take the power back into your corner and you say, you know what? Yeah, I am. It might not be the best part of me. I might not be the happiest about it, but I own that, and I'm going to use that power to walk forward and try not to emulate it, try not to repeat it. But sometimes it's going to come up, and I accept that. And therefore, that person can say whatever they want to you or at you or about you on any level. And you can just be like, okay, but here's what I'm going to do instead. And you have the right to do what you want to do. Just, maybe stay over there, put up a healthy boundary, and just, they let that thing, environment, or person drop off or grow through it and just rock it out. Kind of own it both ways, no matter what happens.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So you're basically accepting yourself with all your positive and negative, and then when other people, and knowing yourself well, so when something is thrown at you, you can tell whether it's, relevant, and whether it's an area where you need to grow or not. And it's
Yep.
okay to not like it sometimes, and but use it to grow, as Basil said.
Yes.
So that's great. I appreciate that. Thank you. And Anvitha, what do you think about that? So, the same question about when you get, pummeled with all this negative or feedback or whatever, how do you deal with that and bounce back?
Well, I feel it is always good to be open to criticism because it helps us to know, but it is important to, put a boundary. We have to know which one we should take. Like the negatives, we have to ignore. The positives, we have to take, and we have to develop ourselves. That is what our fellow panelist told. It is important to keep that growth mindset. And there are some days where I feel low and with low confidence. There are some days where I can't cope up. So I just, walk in the path of spirituality. It gives lot of psychological security, and it helps a lot to build our emotional confidence, and and spiritual, there is a spiritual quotient in our mind, and it helps us secure it. So that is what it is very important to follow spirituality sometimes when we are low in confidence. And I do a lot of things just to divert myself from that, low days. It is that is what I do. This is how I face criticism, and I just get up back, and I just go back to the same who I was again.
That's really good. So, yeah, spirituality, meditation, inspirational books. So just, I guess at that point when you feel low, you can always just buff up your self-care. So whether that's meditation, going out in nature, walking, just taking time to process everything and taking a step back and realizing, like Erin said, that we all struggle. And sometimes we have to just give ourselves some compassion and realize that we may not be where we want to be, but that's okay. And it just gives us a chance, as Basil said, to grow. So those are really great points. And and I also wanted to ask, so some of the people had asked, like the followers had asked about interviews. So they're in that phase of life where they want to, get that job, and then they feel like they're not enough, and then they go to the interview, and then it seems like their confidence just evaporates. So I just wanted to practice some practical tips, so your ideas. So Basil, what do you think about that?
A practical tip for interviews, I would, yeah, I've been on the other side of the chair. So my day job is working for a medical devices business,
Right.
where I'm responsible for hiring and a few other people. Uh, the thing, so if I talk from the perspective of a hiring manager, or at least my type of hiring manager, I think more than finding the most suitable candidate for a particular position, I think I'm most concerned about, or I'm most bothered about finding the most sincere candidate for that position. So I think what happens is when you have somebody coming in for a job, or if I'm trying to apply for a job, my tendency is to, whitewash things, brush up things which are probably half, make it look rosy, make it look nice. Try to imagine what they want to hear from me, and be prepared with all kinds of questions, answers, etc. Assuming that the hiring manager is going to ask me certain types of questions. Now, you speak about the confidence being evaporated. Most of the time, the confidence evaporates when your interview doesn't go as you imagined it is going to go. Right? So you've prepared for something, expecting a certain kind of interview process, and you notice that the process has just changed because the hiring manager decided to go, differently. That's one of the reasons why the confidence evaporates. So I think the main tip that I would like to give people is not to prepare. If somebody has called you for an interview, let's break it down, right? You've applied for a job. Usually you've done it through the internet, sending in a CV. Most likely someone has screened that CV. The next step is somebody's called you. Probably they've had a phone interview with you, a short one. Then they've called you in to sit in front of somebody, either through Teams, Zoom, whatever, or in person, right? So you've already passed 3, 4 steps. By this time, you should have a certain amount of confidence to understand that, okay, this person, if they've called you in for an interview, they obviously have got a certain impression or a certain sense of your capabilities. Now, what you need to go there and do is to just verify that for them. And most of the time, that verification is not by enumerating all your academic achievements, all your professional achievements. Many times it is just enumerating presence of mind. Many times it's just enumerating or exhibiting confidence. So you don't speak a lot, you speak enough, but you speak that enough with confidence. Most of the times that will take you further and further. And that confidence is, you just talk about subjects that you know. That's it. Don't talk about things which you don't know. And that's how you stay within the confidence zone, right? So,
I
I
see
don't know
what
if I'm
you're
making
saying.
sense, but I was trying to talk
I
about
think
something
you're
very
saying
practical.
like it's all about authenticity. Like from your perspective, the more authentic they are, they're easy to trust, and then that would be more you would be more likely to select them rather
Yes,
than just being
because you
like
would be confident,
trying to be
right? Yeah.
overly aggressive, and then it creates the opposite effect.
Yes. Yes.
Right. So Erin, yeah, just in a general way. So if it be an interview, some of these people, like they just have to, they're trying to go to post-secondary or whatever. And so they will have this sort of an interview process. So I was wondering how would you like guide them in terms of things they could do to perform better and feel more confident?
So one of the things that I really like to help people, especially who are getting ready to make a big shift in their environment and in their lives, is to actually look at the situation like if it was a box and then shift it and then shifted it again and realize that joining a new company, getting a new job is as much an interview for you because you are interviewing them as they are interviewing you. So yes, you can be vulnerable. I totally agree with our first guest that, all of those things about showing up and being authentic. But, a lot of people lose confidence in some way because not only do they feel maybe less at that moment because they're being interviewed, but because they're also looking at it from, I really need this job. I really want something. And so they forget that it's not about what you want, it's about what you need too. And it's about you need an environment in which you are going to grow, you're going to be healthy, you have good communication. And so a lot of people give that kind of power away in the moment because they're almost people pleasing, right? They're almost trying to please the interviewer or the person on the phone or the HR department. And so they forget to also inquire about, okay, so, who is my manager like? What's the team like? How do we communicate regularly? Even if you're at home and you're working virtually most of the time and you're not in an office environment, if you forget to interview these people or even ask to talk to your hiring manager and be really, just persistent in needing to know, do you even fit in? Because that's where a lot of people fail in their jobs and become miserable, is because they give that intellectual power away by saying, okay, well, yeah, you're interviewing me to make sure I fit into what your mold is, but you need to fit into my life as well. Because if you're not going to understand, like as the first guest was saying, Basil, I'm sorry, I'm not the greatest with names all the time. You have to be authentically you. And it's not just for your interviewer to figure out whether your authenticity fits in. If they're not regularly in that environment, they're just like the hiring person. You need to be authentic and say, hey, I need to know more about this team because I want to make sure that this is the best, not just financial step. If you're spending 40 hours a week doing it, you better enjoy it. So just kind of reshift the concept of being interviewed as also interviewing them. And that takes off a lot of pressure from the situation because now you're just as responsible for what happens in those meetings as they are.
Oh, that is such a beautiful answer. So, you're and it's kind of one of those very creative answers. So, rather than looking at it as something to get, rather understanding what we are going to get out of it in terms of our self-development and our growth, and then advocating for that. And if we do that, we are going to appear more confident. So that's a really nice way to approach it. Very different and very helpful. So thank you. And that's, in my experience, that's really important because sometimes we just throw ourselves into things thinking everybody's doing this or this is something that, is a status symbol. And then we end up being so unhappy. So the way you approach it is so beneficial for our overall health too. So thank you. And Anvitha, so what do you think about that?
uh, you know, according to me, you have to just give your best. You see, if in an interview, there are two possibilities: either you get the job or you don't get it. It is important to make sure that you should not revolve your life around that interview. You should not think if this is not there, I won't get anything else. But and it is not so important than your life. So this is one point, and the other point is you just have to give your best, no matter what. So that later you should not have regrets that no, I didn't do it well. So to avoid those regrets, we have to do well. So this is second, and third is we have to be very authentic. And if you don't know something, you have to accept it. If you know, you have to answer it confidently. So this is
Right.
my
It's good. So I guess what I'm hearing from you is, like, as a person, like a student, a young person, that preparation is really important, and giving it your all. Assuming that's the job that you want. So the preparation is really necessary, right? And in my experience, another tip that I found is um, just applying to a lot of jobs and getting like practice. Like if you're very shy, getting practice in just doing these interviews, right? And sometimes like that will help you to realize that you're not going to get every job. So then you kind of lose the nervousness just by doing and by trying and making mistakes and learning from your mistakes. So if you can look at it as a process rather than like something you need to acquire. It's a process and you're learning. And then also look at yourself as somebody who has skills that you want to contribute. So, when you approach it as I'm going to the company and I have all these gifts and skills and I want to share them and make the area or the company or the world a better place. So if you look at it more from a contribution point of view, then you're never going to lose, right? Because if there's a good fit, like as Basil said, and you're authentic, it will work out. And so the authenticity, I think, is really important for both sides, right? So, in terms of like, how about mistakes? So, Basil, how do you get back your confidence if you make a big mistake?
Acceptance and owning up to it. I think it starts with accepting and owning up to it. Simple as
Okay.
that. I am yet to meet someone who, was extremely pissed at me or yelled at me or punched me or hit me or whatever. If I told them, I did it, I screwed up, I'm sorry. The moment you do that, it doesn't matter what you've done. You could have made the worst mistake. I mean, as long as it's a mistake, of course. And, if you do it the first time, it's a mistake. Second time, it's a crime. That's what my dad told me, right? So the first time, as long as you're making a mistake, the moment you acknowledge and you own up to it, it doesn't matter against whom you have done it. And the moment you acknowledge and you own up to it, you take away a lot of the fury, the anger, the resentment, etc., from the other person. You just take it away. I mean, what is he going to do? You've already acknowledged, right? Like, what more can he do now? He cannot do anything more. At worst, he's going to, say this is the consequence of it, and etc., etc., etc. So I think the first step is to acknowledge, is to own up to it, and the second step is to make amend, is to make amends as much as you can. You do these two things, and if that is part of your existence, the way you live your life, I don't think you would lose confidence because you've made a mistake.
Okay. So that's again coming back to the growth mindset that the mistakes are teaching us something and that nobody is perfect and we're constantly growing. And so you're going to use it to just propel your growth further rather than get like
Yes.
pushed down into a low level of confidence. So there's a choice, right? So that's a good point. So thank you. And so, Erin, what do you think about that? So some people, they make a mistake in whatever great career they want to do, and then they have this like complete flattening of their confidence, right? So I was wondering what your tips are for that.
So, a lot of my kind of community right now, a lot of people are realizing that during the last 2 years, when we've all had to have different levels of change, that they've done some things that were really amazing and they've done some things that really weren't amazing. And so, some of the things that we've covered is when forgiveness is personal. It's really about you. You can forgive somebody else. You can seek forgiveness from other people, but you can't control that. But what you can control is how you internally perceive it and relive it. Right? So making a mistake, you're going to constantly have the opportunity to relive that mindset anytime something relative to your environment or to what you did or, that embodies that emotion. And it's your choice whether or not to partake it forward into your life or to just let it be in the past, acknowledge it, give it a moment, breathe, move forward. So that's kind of my first step with mistakes is don't let it proceed forward. Don't let it affect your future. But put up a healthy boundary. Notice when you're going to be about to make the same mistake again and choose to do it differently until you find a way that's positive for your growth set. The other thing about mistakes is that even though you wanted something and you have the expectation and you're working on your manifestation and all that kind of fun stuff and it doesn't come, or you made a mistake that is not in alignment, or you made a choice that's not in alignment with that particular thought process, is to accept the fact that it's going to drive you someplace else. It's really more about what you want and where you really want to go, and perpetuating that feeling and happiness inside of yourself. And so to kind of let go of control. You can't control it all. You get up front, you apologize, you acknowledge, and you just let it be. There's no ands, there's no buts. It's just what it is. And just let it play out. And that will give you the opportunity to grow again, as Basil was saying, because now you're going to look at it and you're just going to be like, all right, I accepted what I did. I said, I'm sorry. I'm not going to follow it up with a justification or a rationalization. I'm just going to own it and see what happens. And I think that, a lot of people feel the need to over-explain sometimes, just because of the way that they're feeling. And so it's always good to kind of keep it brief, keep it to the point, and don't ever use the word and, but, or when apologizing.
Those are really great tips. So Anvitha, what do you think? So, as you know, a lot of students, like, they have these big goals and then they make a huge mistake and then they feel like it's like they're nothing, right? So how do you bounce back and get your confidence back?
I feel mistakes are just an opportunity to do something tremendous and different, because they just give a chance to explore things. And it is very important to do different mistakes all the time. We should not repeat the pattern. Pattern of that mistake should not be repeated. Okay, but the thing is, mistakes, like, we have to acknowledge it first, as everybody told, and then we have to think of ways on which we can improve. So this is how I deal with mistakes.
That's really nice. So what I'm hearing is, actually, I remember, I don't know if you guys have seen, like, there's an artist, his name is Bob Ross, and he wouldn't call them mistakes. Like, he would make a mistake on his canvas and he'll call them happy accidents. So he would actually find that, like, on the canvas, or even we find in art, like, we'll make a mistake and then that actually opens up a new area and it actually makes our art more original. So we can also look at it as opening, as Anvitha said, a really good point, opening us up to new possibilities. Basil, do you find that with music? Mistakes can...
My whole musical journey is a series of mistakes. No, I wouldn't say so, but yeah. To be frank, well, you're an artist, right? And as an artist myself, in this case, music, I did not taken formal lessons in art and all of that stuff. I did a little bit of piano playing. I learned that, and that was it. But there is a structure, within music. There's a structure to a song. There's a certain way you compose a song. There's a certain way you write a song. Chord progressions, this thing, the other thing, and the fourth thing, sounds. I didn't know any of that. So I just liked the tune. There was a tune that came to my head. I put it out on the keyboard. I created, a bunch of sequences, and that's what my music is. It turns out that this doesn't comply. I have about 7 songs out in the ether, and it turns out that this doesn't comply to regular song constructions. So now when I'm pitching my music to playlisters or curators or labels or bands or whoever, the first rounds of feedback that I received was, it sounds interesting. And I heard a lot of interesting. I heard the word interesting from a lot of people. And interesting can mean 2 things, right? It can mean really good, or it can be a very polite way of saying, yeah, not really, But I heard a lot of interestings. And then I heard unique. Then I heard original. These were the kind of words I started hearing. At the start, I was very impressed. I was very happy. Later on, I figured out that, okay, it doesn't seem to fit, the way we should be getting feedback. But now what has happened is, because of what I've done the last 7 tracks, because I didn't follow a certain pattern, because I didn't know. I just didn't know. It's not that I was trying to be original. I just didn't know there was a structure and a format to all of this. Turns out my music, comes across as something which is different. And some people love it. Some people like it, but they don't know what to do with it. But the ones who like it, and a lot of my followers, I'm super thankful and humbled by the kind of support, people give me, including you, Shanti, because it's humbling. As an artist, it's humbling. It's even more humbling when you know it's a series of mistakes. So yeah,
Yeah, and
that's the side of it.
mistakes, they add so much beauty, beauty and originality, right? Because a lot of the art is about taking risks, and they kind of open up this path of risks for us. So, which can have a lot of opportunities, if, as you
Yeah.
said, if you use it wisely. So, Erin, yeah, I was wondering, how have mistakes, been helpful in your life?
By choosing paths and, making mistakes, like turning the wrong way, I accidentally bumped into a sailing captain and was able to negotiate my way onto a competitive sailing team for a few years and got to learn and travel and do all of those things. It's listening to that kind of intuition where it was just like, oh, well, this road is not open today. I'm going to take this other road today. I'm going to make a different choice. I'm going to make a mistake. I'm going to cancel a meeting. I'm going to whatever. It's just being open to the fact that the expectation of your day and your time and your energy is not going to be how it actually works out, and embracing the chaos that is life. And in that, there's this beauty, like, and I forget what the technique is called. But I believe it's either like Asian or Japanese. But when a bowl or a piece of something breaks, they take all the pieces and they mend it with gold, and it becomes this new, whole, totally different, but still similar, but not really. And I think that's what really life is about, right? Like if you get up with the expectation that you're going to just do the same thing every single day, then life will inevitably happen to you anyway. But if you choose to just embrace it as, okay, well, I'm just going to take all my pieces, I'm going to lather some gold on it with all my love, and I'm going to go differently. And so, whether it's a business that's failed for me, whether, it's a program that didn't launch the right way, I've always just kind of taken it with a grain of salt and just did some journaling, took some self-care time, licked my wounds, gotten back to it, and just gotten even deeper in mistakes and mastery. And this is something you'll see me say a lot in all of my teachings. The difference between a student and a master is that a master dared to fail more times than a student dreamed of trying. And so if you really want to master something, you really want to love your passion, you really want to be something, then embrace every mistake. Love it to death, no matter what it's done to your life or yourself. And then just go forward and try it again. And, see what happens next, because that's the whole point of living, right?
That is so beautiful. On that note, I wanted to thank you all. You have all shed so much light on confidence, and I think we all learned a lot here today. And I really appreciate all your valuable insights. All of you have your own unique perspective, and it was really, a wonderful experience listening to you. So thank you so much.
Love you.
Thank you, Shanti. Thank you, Erin. Thanks,
Yeah,
Anvitha.
It was lovely
Yeah,
meeting.
appreciate you having us.
yeah. Thank you all, and take care, and have a great weekend. Okay.
Ciao.
You
Mwah.
too.